Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Trav's Outfitter podcast. I'm your host, Shane Carlson. I'm joined by Logan Hammer from the Hamlin County, Game Warden, as well as Kyle Lenzner from Codington County and Dan Sternhagen from right here in Watertown from the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks Agency. And we got a lot to talk about today, guys. There's a lot going on. Hunting season is ramping up and you guys are, I'm sure, busy out in the field, but before we kind of get into our conversation, can you tell the viewers and the listeners kind of what your role is with the Game Fish and Parks Department and then kind of how you got into that role?
Yeah, so I can just start off right away. Logan Hammer, like you mentioned, Hamlin County Conservation Officer. The main role of our jobs, obviously, is to protect wildlife fisheries resources, enforce the laws. We do a lot of like hunt safe programs, educational programs, help with surveys, everything else, help our biologists out too. We kind of do a jack of all trades, a little bit of the face of the department, and help anywhere we really can.
Awesome, that sounds great. And how did you get involved, Kyle?
Kyle Lenzner out of Codington County here. Pretty much all the same stuff Logan said. Here in Codington, it might be a little different, being a bigger population hub. We do a little more when it comes to like the PR stuff, so like mentored hunts, mentored fishing, things like that. A lot of outreach stuff up here in town. So
awesome.
And so Dan Sternhagen, Regional Terrestrial Resource Supervisor. It is a mouthful. They do say, though, the longer the title, the more important you are. So,
I've heard that rumor before.
Sorry to say, guys. But yeah, so I've been all over the state with the Game Fish and Parks. I got my start with the Parks and Rec. Moved all around, was a game warden in Hamlin County before Logan for a few years, and had an opportunity to move up into this position. So what my position is basically terrestrial. It's land resource. So I oversee our wildlife, habitat, private, and public land programs. And that's a pretty big job in and of itself. So wildlife programs, so we have our wildlife damage management program, we have our animal damage control program, we have our biology portion of it. So there's staff under me that goes out and does all the surveys. The conservation officers are a big help with that because we only got one biologist in the region, and so we reach out to a lot of other staff that help conduct those surveys. And then when that's done, that all comes back to the biologist and kind of crunches those numbers and kind of comes up with what our population is out there. And then on the habitat side, in the Northeast, we're one of the largest areas in the state for public land that's owned by the state, Game Fish and Parks. And so, so we got two kind of main districts, one up in Aberdeen, one down in Watertown that kind of handles their areas. And they're always coming up with new ways to develop habitat to raise more wildlife for new and even the experienced hunters that are out there. So, yeah. And then the private land program, that's kind of a newer and bigger thing that's kind of come out. A couple of years ago, we rediverted a bunch of funding towards our private land program, hired 8 new staff to help carry that vision out. And so those individuals that are out there, they're kind of your one-stop shop, per se, to help landowners create habitat for themselves on their own lands. So
that's awesome. So it kind of sounds like you kind of grew up in the Parks and Rec and kind of took that next step. Is that something that both of you gentlemen want to do as well, or are you pretty happy in your role as a CO, or where do you see your futures?
I'd say I'm pretty happy with where I'm at now. I've been with Game and Fish now for close to 6 years total between internships, but been an officer now for 4, and I really love it. So I don't really see myself leaving too far away from that.
Yeah, same thing. I've been here about 13 years now doing the conservation side of things, and don't really see myself moving outside of the conservation officer side, and just want to probably stay there, maybe move up the ranks, but other than that, probably stay on the conservation side. So.
As three COs, one former CO, I know that you've got some stories, and some of them may be good, some of them may be not so good, but what's like the craziest story that you have that just like threw you for a loop? You were not expecting that day you showed up for work.
Oh, I'm trying to think. We get asked this question quite a bit. It seems like I gets put on the spot. We have a ton of crazy stories, but try to remember and think of each one when you get put on the spot.
I did read one about a massive amount of carp being dumped, and that just had to smell awful. I can't imagine that was a very pleasant trip.
That was down in Hamlin County, I want to say 2 years ago now that I went and dealt with. And when the guy called, I remember him saying there was just a ton of carp. But usually you think of like maybe 10, 20, and we got there and there was several hundreds. And it was during the heat of the summer. And yeah, I remember stepping out the door and the smell hit you instantly. And you had to just jump right back in the truck before you threw up.
Yeah, I had a similar deal when I was a Hamlin game warden. Trying to think, kind of up northwest of Hayti it was. It was basically sheet water on this pasture, and a ton, like 100 plus, some pelicans were living there. And every night they'd get up and they'd hit the power lines and die. And the guy would call me and say, "Oh, there's 3 more that are dead." And so I think one day I went out there and picked up like 30 to 40 pelicans, completely filled up the back of the truck. And if anyone has ever dealt with pelicans, they are the stinkiest and bug infested birds in the sky in my mind.
Wow.
So yeah, I had another crazy one, and I think it would have been Calvin Meyer that helped me out. Another pelican story for you. We had one that was tangled up in some fishing line out there on the inlet to Lake Ponset, and a bunch of fishermen. Fishing was really good. They were calling it in, saying this pelican looked sick. It was swimming around in circles, and obviously we wouldn't be able to, shoot it by any means with all the houses around there. So I thought, well, let's go grab my little John boat and we'll buzz out there and see what we can get done. Maybe we can catch it, get it up to the zoo and get it looked at. And by the time Calvin and I got out there, it was, you could see the fishing line wrapped around its beak, wrapped around its wings, its legs. And so basically it was one leg, one wing, and its mouth was all tied up together. And, we got up there, we kind of threw a net over the top of it. I pulled out my pocket knife and slit one of the fishing strings. And then that beak was free. Nothing else wasn't. And it was snapping at me, and I was like, you could hear some words going on in the background on the body cam footage. But we ended up getting it, letting it go. I think it lived, for all I know.
So what happens typically, like in those situations where you're going out and somebody called in something like an injured animal? If it's able to live, what typically happens after you guys handle it?
Yeah, so a lot of times when we go out and look at injured animals, we'll obviously determine whether we think the animal can live or not, whether it's ethical to keep it alive. And a lot of times if it's a bird or something, we end up calling John here at the Bramble Park Zoo, and then we'll bring them there. And then they'll make the final call there, whether they think that they can rehabilitate it, or if it's got to just end up getting put down.
Yeah, so some of the big ones are like bald eagles. Obviously, we're not going to try to put a bald eagle down ourselves. And so, Logan had one that was really, it wasn't shot, was it?
That bald eagle?
Yeah.
No. One of them got hit by a car.
Car, that's what it was. Anytime we get a bald eagle, call it in. We get that rushed up to the Bramble Park Zoo. John Gilman there does everything he can to rehab them, to get them released again. So I had one that actually had mange, according to John. And it was, I had to go, it was still flopping around and couldn't fly, and I had to go catch it. But it had maggots coming out all over. And I got to the zoo, and John's like, I don't think I can save this one, and I'd hate to do the pipe trick to it. And I was like, ooh, let's get it to the vet after that. So, we get a fair amount of red hawk or red-tail hawk calls.
A few owl calls.
Yeah, owls. Another
Big
one.
one. So, most of the birds, they end up going to the zoo and kind of let John make that determination. If he wants to try, let him try and bring it back. So.
Yeah, a lot of times, like other animals, like deer, we do get some injured deer calls, broken legs, whether it's hit by a car or something like that. If it can get moved around, on its own. We're going to try to let it go, let Mother Nature take its place. It's either going to survive or it's going to pass away on its own. Or if it's bad enough, we're going to just put it down. And there's a lot of sheriff's deputies that have that call too.
So over the course of your guys' careers, you've had good days and bad days, I'm sure. But what are the most favorite parts of your job? And then what are the not so favorite parts of the job? I imagine that something like, what you were just describing, when you have to make those calls on injured wildlife, that's not a particularly fun time in your careers. But what are the times that make you coming back every day and have you like excited to do what you do?
Yeah, so I can just start and we'll run down the line. My favorite part's probably working in the fall. Come the hunting seasons, I'm a big hunter, so I love when the weather starts cooling down, the deer moving, get some pheasant hunters out. I don't know, it just seems like it's a lot easier to get up in the mornings knowing you can go out, people will be out hunting, having fun out in the field out that way, and that's my favorite there. And then the other thing is I do a big mentor hunt down in Hamlin County. Dan started it when he was the officer there, and I've kind of kept it going now, and it's called the Chad Nelson Memorial Deer Camp. So basically what it is, we bring a bunch of first-time hunters out, and they get the chance. We give them all the gear. We get on some really good properties down in Hamlin with deer problems down that way, and basically they all get to go out and shoot or attempt to shoot their first deer. So that's probably my favorite part. You get to see a lot of smiles at the end of that, and a lot of people then the next year, they call you and say thanks for bringing them, and they're going back hunting again that year.
That's awesome. Super cool way to bring people up through, get them outside, because I feel like it's a more common story than we like to admit, but a lot of kids maybe don't have parents that hunted or fished, and so they've never really gotten to experience that to no fault of their own. But
yeah, when we started that deer camp, some of what we call them our R3 staff, our recruit, retain, and retain or reactivate staff out up here, they did a study that, if you can't get the parents involved, it's really hard to get the kids involved. And so that was kind of one of the big things that we tried to focus on with that deer camp was, we require the parents to come with. They get to see it, get to see the excitement on the kids' face. It's a full setup, start to finish, guide, processing, everything you can think of. And so, when you ask, what got us into these positions, I don't think anyone in the department would probably not say, we got into it because we have a love and passion for the outdoors. That's a huge thing. And seeing people or helping people get into the same passion that we're in, that's the heart of it right there. That gets me up every day. And even as an officer, getting out and checking some of the youngsters out there that are fishing, your violation rate is probably pretty low, but you get to make a smile on their face, hand them out one of those badge stickers, and it's just a fun experience all around. So,
how about yourself, Kyle?
Yeah, it's part of the job is getting to make our own schedule, getting to be out there. Like Logan said, you just never know what's going on. There's different seasons. Every day is different. It's not just going to the same office, doing the same thing every day. Every day is something new. Like we've talked, you're dealing with animals every day, birds every day. You might be dealing with fish the next day. The next day you might be doing surveys. Next day you might be dealing with youth. You just never know what the day is going to bring. So that's kind of the fun of what we do is every day is something new. And like Logan and Dan have been talking, we also do a turkey hunt up here in the spring. It's mirrored after that deer camp down there in Hamlin County. It's very similar to that, and just getting to deal with the kids and seeing them, it's awesome. It's getting them out there, getting them involved. It's a fun time.
And that's, we talk about getting the next generation involved, and to pass this down, you got to have that next generation lined up. Mm-hmm. What's one of the most common violations that you guys see in the field these days? Is it fishing? Is it fishing without a license or hunting without a license? What do you guys see most commonly?
It all kind of depends on the season. During the summer, we got a lot of boating going on, so probably boating violations are going to be our bigger one that we run into. Probably no life jacket or throwable device, things like that. I know here in up in Compesca and with down by Logan, we have a couple big lakes or big rec lakes. We do see a lot of jet ski type violations as well. And then you move into the hunting season. It just depends on which hunting season's going on, kind of seeing what violations are. Waterfall season, we just had that open here, 2 weeks ago? And usually they're probably something stamp related. No federal stamp or migratory bird cert or unplugged shotguns. Those are usually our common violations there. When it comes to pheasant hunting, probably road hunting violations, I'd say is probably our biggest one there. And moving into the deer season, which comes around Thanksgiving there, probably shooting from the road is probably one of our bigger ones, trespassing, things like that, which usually go hand in hand when it comes to shooting from the road. So.
Yeah, it all kind of depends on which season it is. Like you said, it's either hunting, fishing, ice fishing, turkey season. It kind of all depends on what season it is, depending on which violation. But usually each year, a lot of them are pretty similar.
With pheasant hunting coming up, I mean, what's compared to last year? How does this year how's it looking to shake out? But also, like, have you guys seen an increase in the youth coming up to pheasant hunt versus maybe some years past? I feel like it's getting more and more popular, but I just kind of want to hear what you guys have to say about that.
This year is kind of hard to judge the youth. The youth season just opened here last weekend, but when it's 85 degrees out, a lot of guys don't want to get out on the field and take their dogs out there. I know the Pheasants Forever, they had a youth hunt here this last weekend in Watertown. And I think Dual County has one this weekend. But I mean, there was, I think, 20-some kids up at that one, so it seemed like a pretty good turnout. It seems like the bird numbers are doing pretty good this year, which is, we had an easy winter, and then it's been a good spring so far and good summer, so hopefully that continues into the fall here.
Absolutely, yeah. And then getting into deer season, how do you compare the two? I mean, they're two totally different things, but South Dakota is like the place to go for pheasant hunting. Do you think it's more popular than deer hunting, or how do you see that shaking out?
I think pheasant hunting's our big ticket item there. And when you ask about youth and mentor, I think it ebbs and flows year after year. You're going to have your high years, you're going to have your low years, but I would say it's a steady average. National trend is trending down. That's kind of common across everything, and so that's why we try to do everything we can to recruit, retain, and reactivate as many hunters as we can to carry on that tradition. But bird numbers, like Kyle's saying, coming off of a really nice winter, they have a lot of fat reserves that carries them through that nesting period for the hens, which creates a bigger clutch size for them. And so, yeah, bird numbers are going to look, I think, really good. Obviously, in Watertown, we had some hailstorms come through. That's going to be pretty spotty. Hail's a really detrimental Mother Nature aspect when it comes to pheasant populations. So you'll see some spots like that. You're not going to see much. But I would say, talking to a lot of officers and other sportsmen from here to, that Spink, Falk, up north, numbers are looking pretty good for pheasants. Deer, kind of same aspect. They came off a nice light winter. They react fairly similar to the pheasants, as long as they have enough fat reserves to get through that aspect in the springtime. They're going to do pretty good too. Unfortunately, down south, when we were kind of getting together and putting together our deer numbers for deer licenses, that southeast area, when they had all that flooding go through, I know we were super worried about that. That was at the peak time of pheasants just hatching, turkeys just hatching, fawns not quite moving quite yet. As that deer drops that fawn pretty much stays put for a period of time. And, who knows how many got washed away in those floods down there. So, but I would say definitely around that Watertown, and then the farther west you go, people are going to see some pretty good success, I bet, this year.
One of the questions that I wanted to get to was, as you guys are in the field or close to the field every day, working in the outdoors, what do you guys do to get away? Like, do you find yourself wanting to get out in the field and fish after work, or what do you guys do like after work?
It's There's definitely times it's tough. Like I noticed in the summer times, you'd be out on the boat all day working. It's hot out, a lot of people. Last thing you want to do is it seems like I want to go fishing, but you get home, it's like I don't want to go back out to the lake where everybody's at. So I don't know. I try to confine myself though, still getting out hunting and fishing quite a bit. Honestly, probably more. Some of these guys joke around that I go hunting and fishing too much. So
Too much.
so I don't know. I honestly might find myself hunting and fishing a little more now than before I was an officer, just because it's something I love to do and try to keep that passion still.
Yeah, I would second that. Back when I was an officer, that was kind of the one thing that always bugged me. I mean, you were working when everybody else was playing, and I do put a lot of emphasis on that with a lot of our conservation officers. They work day in and day out, nighttime, daytime, morning time. They're out all hours of the day, and it takes a toll. Them and their families, they are out there protecting and preserving what we have for you and I that are probably out there for, as I would say, quote unquote, weekend warriors. Now that I've moved into this position, weekends are the time. I try to get out as much as I can. I sit in an office, 8 to 5. Kyle makes fun of me about it half the time, but yeah, it's kind of a different ball game for me. But yeah, I think everyone in our agency all has that passion for hunting and fishing. So we're going to do the most we can. But obviously, like Logan said it, I mean, I think majority of our officers, they work so hard and so long during those times. They're like, oh, do I really want to go back out? Mm-hmm. So
I'd say I'm right there with Logan. I like the hunting and the fishing. If that's my way to unwind after work, I guess it's even though you're dealing with it all the time, it's still peaceful just to be sitting out in the tree stand hunting or being out on the boat fishing, just away from everybody. So it's kind of nice just to get away.
I'm sure you guys have your favorite spots that you don't tell anybody, right? You guys don't have those, do you?
Oh yeah, Kyle's the master of the secret. He's got all the secret spots that he won't even tell us about.
He won't tell us where the fish are biting until like 2 weeks after he's had his fair share of it.
Should have been here yesterday. They were biting like crazy. Yeah, that's always my favorite excuse. You should have been here yesterday. So, what piece of advice would you give the modern sportsman or sportswoman that I would say adult, and then also what would your advice to like a youth be that wants to be involved and do the same things that you guys do?
I would say definitely just get out and take advantage of our state's resources. I mean, we're pretty fortunate here. Like Dan said, we got a ton of public land here, like really good public land too. So I mean, that's one thing that scares people when they're trying to get into hunting is they might not have a piece of private property to go on, but we have a bunch of good public land. I mean, especially as somebody new, like a young kid, just ask everyone. I remember as a kid, like ask my dad all the time, can we go hunt or fish? Ask my cousins, my grandpa, like whoever you got, just ask somebody to see if they take you with, and it just gets you outdoors, and maybe you'll find yourself that you got that passion then, and you can eventually, once you get old enough, you can start going on your own and kind of get your own stuff, and then especially if you get an interest too for like our jobs. I mean, we offer a ton of internships and we do ride-alongs all the time. That's basically how I got to want to be an officer, is just doing ride-alongs through. I mean, I remember doing a ride-along with you. I did a ride-along with Dan when I was.
And look at you now. They didn't scare you away.
Dan almost did, but no, I mean, that's what I'd recommend for young kids. I mean, that's all you got to do is get in. Call us if you're interested in. Once you get older, come with us. You can see the job, and that might be the ultimate job you want to do for the rest of your life then.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at getting into the outdoors, I think everybody kind of gets scared by, I don't know what to do. Where do I start? How do I begin? And these guys, they joke that, I have my secret spots. Everybody has their secret spots to go to, but most outdoorsmen, they're willing to share information and willing to help get you started, point you in the right direction. Yeah, they might not share those couple secret spots, but they can get you going and get you started. And just ask some of those fellow sportsmen if you need some help. They'll probably at least point you into where to get started and where to go and stuff. So get you on the right path and get out there and just try it. It's like I said, it's peaceful to be out there just seeing. I mean, you get to see stuff that most other people don't. Yeah, it kind of sucks getting up early at times to go out hunting and stuff, but you also get to see some of them views that you wouldn't see staying at home, laying in bed or whatever either. So.
Yeah, and I always kind of mention that the camaraderie of the hunting party. You know, maybe it's a family farm that you get to go to and spending time with friends and family is near and dear to my heart, I guess. That's what I really like about it. But for a lot of the other youth, you know, I hear so often like, oh, we didn't get our limit. It's not all about the limit. It's just about spending time with people you like hanging out with, whether that's friends or family or whatnot. And so, you know, whether you didn't get your limit, it's not the end of the day. You got tomorrow to go out. And so for the older ones, yeah, I don't know what else I could really add to what these guys are saying. So getting into the game fishing parks, if people wanted to get into an outdoors job, Logan's right. We have a ton of internships, doing the ride-alongs, getting involved in some of our, you know, naturalist programming that we have out at Pelican State Park. I don't know, does Cassie do anything out at Compesca? Or is most of it Pelican?
Usually it's Pelican, but
Yeah.
they do a few down at Sandy Shore there. But
Yeah, so I mean, if there's parents and kids out there that are interested, I mean, those programs are a great entry level type program to attend. And all it takes is a park entrance license to get into the park, and you can attend that. I mean, she'll do Dutch oven cooking, she'll do bird watching, they'll do cops and bobbers. There's
archery events. Yeah, lure making. I know she did a 4-part series this year on getting women into fishing and stuff. So I mean, there's lots of opportunity out there.
Yep.
And where can people go to look for these things? Are they listed on the website or?
If you go to our website, there is a calendar on the top, an events calendar, and a lot of the park stuff is on there, and a lot of our events are on there as well. I know they share stuff on their Facebook pages too, but I think from my understanding, all that stuff is on that events calendar on our webpage.
Awesome. And you mentioned internships. Are those listed there as well, or is that something that you just call for? Or?
Well, that's going to be listed under the state website.
Okay.
You can go to our website and click Work for Us, and then it takes you to the state website. Click internships, and it'll have a whole list of internships for every department in the state. Usually game fishing parks, I mean, we can't do our job without our interns half the time, and so there'll be a lengthy list, and you know there'll be internships, you know, in the Northeast. So we're split up into 4 regions: the Northeast, the Southeast, Missouri River, and then out west. And so, yeah, I mean, if you have an interest into working in the outdoors and working for game fishing parks, and you grew up in Watertown, how cool would it be to go work out West River and work with some bighorn sheep or the buffalo at the Buffalo Roundup? I mean that's just cool. You don't get to do that in every single job. So, and
that brings up a neat point, is that when you get some of these positions, you're basically given like a region, correct? They send you, and that's where you go to work. Is that correct?
To a degree, especially on the wildlife side. As a conservation officer intern, you know, you get assigned a region, you do a bunch of ride-alongs, and you get to help with some of their details. But if you're a WDM intern, which is our wildlife damage management, you get kind of a district, and you kind of work in like a 5 or 6 county area. Our habitat interns, same way. Our fishery interns are usually state or region-wide, I would say. But there's other jobs. Anything out of the pier sections, usually statewide, that you're going to work out of, and so on. So yeah, it's if you have any interest, look it up, try it, and I guarantee you'd have a fun time.
In our internship, it's like Dan said, they might be for goose step or something like that, but that's not all they do all summer. They'll sometimes help with the fisheries. They'll sometimes ride with us. They'll sometimes help with the parks. They'll go here. I mean, they get to try different things to see if what they like the most and which way they might want to go when it comes to a career. So.
And for those interns, are they high school age, post high school, or how does that program work?
College.
College.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So the parks, they'll hire some high schoolers. I think down to the age of 16, if I remember right. You do have some limitations of what you can operate for equipment, vehicles and stuff like that, for our seasonals. And so when you look for the jobs online, there'll be internships and then there'll be seasonal or temporary positions. And so if you're working on the parks and you're 16 or 17, you want to get into the game fishing parks, look for those seasonal positions. Those are what you're going to qualify. And then once you get into college, then you're looking for those internships. Those are going to be more specific, career-oriented type jobs. So.
Awesome. And my last question to all three of you is there anything that you want our listeners and viewers to know about your jobs or about hunting, fishing, things coming up?
Oh, one thing I know I was going to mention here is like hunting seasons are kicking off. Pheasant season's coming up, deer season. A lot of people forget about our tips hotline. Like a lot of people know, in Codington, there's 2 officers up here, but like Hamlin, there's only 1. So one guy trying to cover all that. A lot of stuff we might not end up seeing. So I want to remind the listeners out there, if they are, to call that tips hotline. It's on every back of the handbook. You can find it online. It can all be anonymous, but ultimately, animals aren't like people. They can't tell somebody when somebody does them wrong. So unless we happen to catch them, a lot of times they don't find out. So just call that number. You can be eligible for a huge reward. I know, like I just wrapped up a case down in Hamlin, and the guy's probably going to get close to just under $1,000 for calling some information in. So definitely, if you see something, say something to us.
Yeah, that's where most of our big cases come from, is that tips program. So don't forget it's out there, and get us the information if you can, or if you have something. So
Yeah, I don't have anything on, like the tips program, but, get out and enjoy the resources that we have and enjoy the outdoors. Get out there, hunt, get out there and fish. And if you got questions, 400 West Kemp's the regional office. Stop in, ask questions. We have 2 awesome secretaries there that answer questions day in and day out. It seems like that's what we're here for. We're in the customer service side of business too, and so we're going to try to help you the best we can and get you in the spot you need to be have a good time.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming in today to talk about your positions and what's going on in game fish and parks world and around the region. And so that's a wrap for episode 8. I can't believe we're already 8 episodes into the Trav's Outfitter podcast, but here we are. So again, thank you guys for stopping in, and remember to subscribe and or like our podcast wherever you happen to listen. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you can listen on there, and then watch the videos on our YouTube channel. So until next time, thank you.